Okay, so welcome everybody. Today we want to talk about the changes that are coming down from NAR. If you don't know the backstory on it, a couple years ago, the Department of Justice, DOJ, decided to bring some lawsuits against NAR, which is our National Association of Realtors. The gist of it is that they just want to make sure that we are as transparent as possible with the consumers, which is also what our real estate commission wants us to do. They also want to make sure that we're playing fairly. Anytime you have a large trade organization in the United States, and NAR is the largest trade organization, I think, in the world. There's many millions of realtors that are a part of this. Anytime something gets that big and it's not directly in the oversight of the federal government, they tend to get a little nervous and they tend to want to put their stamp on it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's always checks and balances and all of that. But they do want to make sure that we're playing fair and that we are not making sure that real estate agents who are not realtor members, who are not part of our MLSs and everything, can't also make their living selling real estate. So this is kind of what started all of these things. So all of these changes are coming about because of these lawsuits. So if you've been following it, you also know that the lawsuit got dropped. That doesn't mean that the DOJ said, pat, pat, pat on the head, you're doing a great job, we were wrong, we're backing off. There can be a lot of reasons for them doing this, including them maybe wanting to be able to do something in the future. So, but NAR did decide through all the powers that be, everybody got together and has been talking about this for years. These are not new changes to them, but they've decided that they're pretty much going to do everything that the Department of Justice asked them to do. For many reasons, but most of them are transparency and cooperation. And we all want to do that. This is our livelihood. Everybody wants to play friendly in the sandbox and everything. And we want to make sure that the Department of Justice knows that we're trying to do that. And more importantly, that our clients know that we are trying our best to make sure that everybody is getting the best service at the best, ethics and all of that kind of stuff. So that's the background of it. So these are the 8 changes that kind of came down. So I probably should be sharing a screen and everything so that you guys can kind of read through these. But if you do click on that FAQ that Heather sent, those are the things that we're going to be going through, and that might be the easiest thing. Let me see if she has actually, okay.
I can share. Okay, never mind. You got it.
I'm in there. So I'm going to come to here first. Can everybody see the screen? Just somebody unmute themselves. Give me a thumbs up, something that I can see. It'll say 2022 MLS policy changes.
I can see it.
Cool. Okay. So this kind of goes over the summary of everything. And this is a list that comes out. Changes are made all the time at NAR level. Some of them you know about immediately, some of them you don't, some of them affect you quite a bit, some of them don't. So right here where you'll see this is mandatory, recommended, optional, and informational. So a lot of the changes that are made, some of them are just informational changes. Some of them are optional to put into place, but a lot of everything we're talking about today are absolutely mandatory. I will say that out of these 8, there are some that are pure back office. I'm not going to talk about them all that much because I am not an expert in broker back office systems and such things. If you have questions about that, there are plenty of data source policies and everything that we could probably send out to you, but that's just not what we're talking about today. I just want to let you know what you need to be doing to get yourself in compliance. The main thing is, so anytime that NAR makes sweeping changes or any changes, they do take effect on January 1st of the year. So all of these rules are already in effect. They are not implemented until March 1st. That gives everybody in the realtor organizations enough time to get the word out, get all these things in place, and be able to implement by March 1st. But March 1st is next week, and all of these things are in effect. I say that there is a caveat. There are a couple things that CMLS and everybody has really fought to get extended a little bit. So there are a couple of them. And as we go through those, I'll tell you what they are. But again, they're mostly the back office things. Some of them have gotten extended because it's going to be too hard for Flex MLS and MLS vendors in general to be able to roll those out in time. They're just a lot of data maintenance and everything. So there are a couple things that have gotten pushed off, but the things that actually matter to you and how you're running your businesses and the words that you're saying when you're talking to clients, those absolutely go into effect on March 1st. Okay. So the first one is property addresses. Okay. So at the time of filing a listing, participants and subscribers must include a property address that is available to other participants and subscribers. If an address doesn't exist, sometimes lots and stuff like that don't have addresses, that's fine. Parcel identification number, so those are the PIN numbers in GIS, sometimes they're PID, sometimes they're parcel, whatever you can use. Those are fine, but the information filed with the MLS must include a legal description of the property sufficient to describe its location. So sometimes you do get, these are usually kind of in office exclusive type situations or something. Somebody may not want their property address blasted out to the MLS. If it's an office exclusive, it's not going out on IDX feeds. Nobody on Zillow is going to be able to see that. So that's a little bit different. But you do have to have a property address or some very identifying feature so people could find it. You can't just say address withheld, super secret, whatever, call listing agent and I'll drive you there in a blindfold. You can't do that anymore. The property addresses have to be visible if there is a property address. If there's not, identifying information enough to identify it to a normal thinking person is going to be required. And you see that little M at the end, that is mandatory. Okay. So that one might affect a couple of us. You just need to make sure that if you do have a client, you're going to take a listing and you have a seller that says, yes, I want to list my property with you. No, I absolutely don't want my address out there. You really need to have a conversation with them because it can't be in the MLS. Okay. The next one, this is a big one. Okay. Services advertised as free. MLS participants and subscribers must not represent that their brokerage services to a client or customer are free or available at no cost to their clients, unless the participant or subscriber will receive no financial compensation from any source for those services. Okay, there's a lot of words to unpick there. And as we go through the FAQs, I'm expecting some questions and everything. Please, unmute yourself. I'm not always great at looking at chats. So if I forget to look up there, hopefully Heather's looking or somebody's looking too. But if you do have questions and I'm not answering them, if you put them in the chat, go ahead and just wave your hand or interrupt me or something. But let me go through this a little bit and then we'll kind of open some of these up for questions. Okay. So this one is so important that our code of ethics has changed. So if you do any training on the code of ethics, which everybody should, because we're in our new cycle for our new tri-annual ethics. They change it all the time. I never know if it's bi or tri or whatever. I tend to take an ethics class every year just to make sure. I don't know. So Article 12. Article 12 is a huge thing for us. We actually have a citation policy on it at Jacksonville Board of Realtors because it's such a huge thing. These are the ones where we are going to be honest and truthful in our communications, present true pictures in our advertising, marketing, all of those things. And this is what this falls under. So standard of practice 12.1, they've moved it way up there in the standards of practice. It is the first one. So the very first one has now been amended as of January 2022. Standard of practice 12.1, Article 12 of our Realtor Code of Ethics. Realtors must not represent that their brokerage services to a client or customer are free or available at no cost to their clients unless the realtor will receive no financial compensation from any source for those services. Sounds familiar, huh? They did this straight from the NAR policy, okay? So this is in your code of ethics, which means that if you violate this, it's not just an MLS violation. You're not just going to get some sort of automatic fine for doing something or blah, blah, blah. You're likely going to go in front of a grievance panel, okay? So this is super important. So what are they talking about? There are exceptions to this. I wouldn't say exceptions. There's things that mean no compensation. But the general one for this is when you're presenting your working with real estate agents and your buyer agency agreement to buyers. I've heard the scripts. I know what people say. And a lot of times you are telling your buyers, hey, buddy, this is great. You know, you get my services. I will work for you. I work only for you. We're not going to do a dual agency. We're not going to do anything. I work for you. My entire firm works for you. And guess what's even better? You don't pay me a penny. Okay. No more of that. Change your scripts. Okay. So we can't say that anymore because you are getting paid. You may not be getting paid specifically from the buyer. He's not writing you a check, but you are getting paid for your services. So you cannot advertise your services as free or at no cost to your client. Okay. So that's when we're talking about buyer agency and stuff like that. And that's the biggest one. So Ellen, you should be able to see the it says changes to model MLS rules and regulations. I didn't pull up the code of ethics or anything like that on here. So as long as you can see this screen, we're just kind of sticking to this one for now. I just wanted you to know that the code of ethics picked it up word for word from the NAR proclamation. It's in there, okay? So what else does this mean though? So if you look through the FAQs and everything, so these don't go in order. So let me see, where are we on the free stuff on that one? So we're actually at their pages aren't numbered. I don't know, it's like page 5, it's number 5 on there. So MLS policy services advertised as free. Okay, so the very first question on there is usually the top question everybody asks. Can I still offer free CMAs, free BPOs, other valuations and things like that? Yes, and you can say those are free. So the difference there is that you are offering and we're going to use CMA as the example because I think a lot of you, do probably say these things. You send out flyers, emails, mailers, all kinds of things saying that, hey, would you like a free market analysis of your house? Great, that's absolutely fine. As long as you are not indeed charging for that CMA, as long as you are never going to charge for that CMA. And it doesn't mean that you don't expect or hope to get a listing from them that you will get paid for, because those are two separate services. CMA, absolutely free, not asking you for money for it, never ask you for money for it. I'm not going to ask you for money on it on the listing agreement and say, this fee plus $50 for my CMA. You're never going to do that. So as long as you're never going to charge for that CMA, you can advertise it for free. If you are going to charge for it, you can't say it's free. You have to put a price on it or do whatever, but I don't know too many people that do that. Okay, so even if you do hope to get that listing that you will get compensated for, or you intend to get that listing and you'll get compensated for it eventually partially because of this CMA that you've worked up, that's absolutely fine because they are two different services. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? All right. So really all of that one about is just being very truthful in your advertising, because it's never been true that you don't pay me a penny for my services. Could they have gotten the house for less if you weren't their buyer agent? Possibly. If they would have gone straight to the listing agent and negotiated that down or whatever, they may be able to pay less for the house. So they did pay you. they pay you, you know, it comes out of the seller's proceeds, which the seller has proceeds from the sale because the buyer paid them money for their house. So was it ever true that you were working absolutely for free? No, they just weren't striking a check. Okay. So it's just in the spirit of being very truthful in our advertising that we are not saying that we're going to do, you know, we're not going to write 20 contracts before one gets accepted and work for 6 months to get you to the finish line, and we're not going to get anything from you, because it's not truth in advertising. Okay. So that's a big one. So big it made it to the code of ethics. So just definitely be aware of this, and definitely be telling your agents in your office, your brokers in charge, if they're not on this call, or if they haven't seen this come out from NAR or from JBOR sent all this stuff out. If they don't know this, they need to know it. If you know somebody in your office advertises things like that, you know, my buyer agency services are free. If they've got, you know, gosh forbid, giant billboards up or something, get those down. I mean, I'm not going to drive around and start reporting people to NAR, but you could, or, you know, I mean, just be very mindful of that. And if you do see something on social media that you think violates this, or you do see something somewhere else, please call them. This is a brand new rule. Let's, you know, let's be good co-brokes. Let's be good people and just explain to them why this isn't a thing anymore. Okay. So there is that one. Does anybody have any questions on the free? Hearing none, let's move on, and we can come back to any of these. If something strikes you later on, it's absolutely fine. Okay, so section 5.4, display of listing broker's offer of compensation. So this is likely the one that you're going to get asked about the most. What this means, if you haven't read through everything, is that now every buyer in the world who is looking on your website, on anything that IDX is out, I don't know if that's a verb, but anything that comes out from our MLS, including Zillow, Realtor.com, Homes.com, any of those, the buyer's agent's commission is going to be visible on there. Okay. So this raises a couple issues. Now, we all know that we would never only show houses that have high commissions on them or have bonuses or any of that stuff. We all know we don't do that on purpose. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later, because there's a whole nother rule that kind of encompasses this. So I don't think that's the problem. But where the problem could come in is our buyer agency agreements. Again, they have a compensation percentage listed on there, right? And a lot of times, if you're working with real estate agents, getting them pre-approved and writing your buyer agency before you show them houses or before they've made an offer, you don't know exactly what you're going to get paid yet. All you can do is make your best educated guess, throw a number in there. Okay. So you throw, again, antitrust, all of that stuff. I'm just throwing in a number. I'm going to say I'm throwing 10% in there. Okay. As a buyer agent, I'm going to get paid 10%. Please be aware that the buyer agency agreement does already say that it'll attempt to come from this. And please don't write anything. This is my 2 cents. Other brokers in charge may feel differently. Please ask them. Just write a percentage there. Don't draft anything else after that. Just a percentage. And it's your best guess. Okay. Absolutely. It may be wrong. And guess what? You may have to take a whole 30 seconds later on in the transaction, once you know what you're getting, to strike through that and change it, or to do a confirmation of compensation form. That's not the right name for that form, but you may have to take an extra 30 seconds later on in the process to make sure that you're disclosing this correctly, but it's worth it. Just put a percentage in there, okay, and move on. But once you do that, like I said, please be aware. So if you have done that and you guessed X amount, I put X% on my buyer's agency agreement, and then they ended up buying 123 Main Street. Well, your buyer can now see on whatever website they're on that you're actually getting paid Y, not X. And they have questions for you. Okay. So this is where doing those strike throughs, as soon as you know what they're locked into and which house they're buying, go ahead and have them change that buyer agency agreement or do that compensation form. Okay. That just says this has changed or whatever. Also be aware that that should be coming out in Flex. You know, when you print your MLS sheets, you have the private view and the public view. We've always been told, absolutely, you cannot send that private view to your buyers because it has proprietary information on that. And that is still true. There is still going to be a private view because there's still information on there that your client does not need to know. The compensations just don't happen to be part of that anymore. Okay. But if you're having your and again, my 2 cents as a broker in charge, if you're giving that private view to your clients to sign on that MLS sheet, that it's a private view for a reason. It is an internal form for members of our MLS. It has proprietary information on it. Please don't do that. Just take the same 30 seconds it took you to find the MLS sheet, print it out, put an initial on that, to go ahead and do that on the buyer agency agreement. Okay. So the second half of this is this part down here. So let's just read this. So participants and subscribers who share the listing broker's offer of compensation for an active listing must display the following disclaimer or something similar. The listing broker's offer of compensation is made only to participants of the MLS where the listing is filed. Okay, so what that means is that every website out there, again, your website, Zillow, Homes, Realtor, all of those kind of things, after that offer of compensation, that X percentage, it will always say listing broker's offer of compensation is made only to participants of, like ours will say, NCR MLS. Okay, you're still only making that offer of compensation to members of our MLS outright. Okay. This brings up a couple of questions that I've asked Will Martin and Bill Gifford at NCR, because our listing agreements don't really say this. They're bringing it up at their forms committee meeting to see if that's something that they can do, if that's something that they can change on our listing agreement. So if you think to your listing agreements on page 4, where it does the cooperation and compensation, you've got three little tick marks that you can make. Okay. We're going to cooperate with seller sub-agents at X%. We're going to cooperate with buyer agents at X%, and basically other. So right now, in my opinion, until this listing agreement is changed, I would think that all of us would have to be checking that third box to say, because what it says is cooperate with and compensate other cooperating real estate firms according to the firm's attached policy. So nowhere, it just doesn't say that we're only paying members of our MLS. That's always kind of been the thing, but it really doesn't say that. So they are going to look into it and just see some of that stuff. Why this is important now is our region is big. Okay, we take up 47% of the state, but we sure do have agents from Raleigh who are not part of our MLS yet, coming in and selling houses here. We've got members from Fayetteville who are not part of our regional MLS yet, coming to sell houses here, even people from Charlotte. Okay, and now those agents can be on Zillow or Homes or Realtor.com, and they can see what our offer of compensation is. So they can reach out to you and say, hey, Amy, I've got a buyer that wants 123 Main Street. I'm going to send you an offer. I'm not a member of your MLS. And they could be expecting to get paid whatever's on there. That's not the way it works. They have to negotiate that with you. Okay. If they're outside of our MLS, you have not offered them anything. They can bring an offer. You can accept, your seller can accept the offer, all of that. You have not offered to pay them anything. They have to negotiate that with you, okay? So just be aware of that. But at least then they would have a kind of an idea of what you're willing to pay. But would you maybe be willing to pay an agent from Charlotte a different percentage than what you're willing to pay an agent who's here and able to physically show the house, physically come check on the house when their buyer has questions, physically go to walkthroughs, physically go to inspections, all of that stuff? You're going to have that conversation with them, because if they're expecting to just hand you a contract and have the closing check sent to them after closing, you may not be willing to pay them the same amount that you would to somebody who's in town and going to do all the duties that a buyer agent should be doing. So it is completely fine to renegotiate that compensation. Just know that they've already seen what you're offering to pay our MLS. Okay. So like I said, there's a couple things on that, but just be aware that this is probably the one you're going to get the most questions on, because all of a sudden buyers are going to start seeing that, all these people that have been looking at these websites for months, looking for houses, all of a sudden the feed's going to look different to them. And they're going to be like, oh man, what's this? But if they have questions, just make sure that you're always disclosing exactly what you are getting paid. And do that on the buyer agency agreement, even if it has to be strike-throughs with initials. Like I said, there is the compensation form that you can use as well that makes it all clean. Just make sure that you're always getting that in writing, because now they are going to know. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on any of those things?
I got a question, Amy.
Yep.
So my gut feels like that MLS comment to pay people only within the MLS is not fair, because I get the concept, like those agents aren't always out here, but a handful of them do come, because my understanding is we're licensed in the whole state. So how can we be licensed in the whole state and have that license and then have someone else come in and kind of say, just kidding, but we're not going to pay you?
Well, just exactly what I just said. I may be offering to pay you, Desiree, if you bring me a buyer, I'm going to pay you X. But if this agent from Charlotte truly thinks that they're going to send me an offer and never show up in this town, and I'm going to have to do all of their physical work on top of everything else, no, I might want to pay them Y. So it's not that you're not going to pay them. It's just that it needs to be negotiated. I mean, you can renegotiate any compensation. Even if I offer you X, you can say, I don't really want to do it for that. I'll do it for Y. You can tell me that. We can talk about it.
Before an offer is presented, though, correct? Because I've heard that you can't negotiate a compensation once an offer is presented. All compensation negotiations have to be done prior to an offer being submitted.
They should, but I mean, things change. How many times have you asked somebody to reduce their commission and help pay for an inspection or something? That's not X percent anymore. That's X percent minus $450.
Yeah, it's always funny what's supposed to happen and what does happen. The caveat to that, though, is would we be doing a revision to the upcoming listing agreement then? Because we're already agreeing with the seller how much we're offering to subs, other agents. And as of right now, it doesn't have a disclaimer in there that specifies this MLS location. So is that something we'd be, making a recommendation to have the listing agreement changed?
That's what I've done. Yeah, I've asked Bill Gifford and Will Martin to run that up the flagpole at their forms meeting, and it wasn't in their discussions before, but I don't think I don't know what they'd seen come across their desks. But really, I mean, it's not 100% necessary, because it is MLS policy that this is your offer to compensation is for the MLS. That is just what the MLS is for. It is an offer of cooperation and compensation. So if you're not a member of our actual MLS, we owe you all the ethics in the world. We owe you cooperation. We just don't owe you compensation. We don't owe you compensation. We will probably happily give you some sort of compensation, but it's not automatic. That's the only difference. But like I said, I mean, and if you want to, what I've kind of started looking at, so we do have our company's office policy manual, and page 25 of our office policy manual actually does cover if we pay seller sub-agents, buyer agents, all of that kind of stuff. And so we did go ahead and amend our policy manual to just put that little blurb in there. So if we decide that we're going to check that third box, you just have to attach something to the listing agreement. So we would just attach page 25 of our office policy manual to the listing agreement, and they would sign off on that. Just don't be, I see a lot of people, things have come across my desk over the years where people just automatically check all 3 boxes. But if you check that last box, you have to attach something to the listing agreement. It says you're going to attach something to the listing agreement. So if you're just checking the box just to have a box checked, you're also not doing it right. So it would be a simple thing for most companies to do. You just need to update your policy manual, attach whatever page it is of yours, and just have initials on that too, if you think it's important. But like I said, it's kind of a, excuse me, I've been talking too much today. You don't need to, as far as I know, but I am hoping that they will just make it simple and go ahead and put it in the listing agreement somewhere so that it's not just something that's laying out there. All right. Okay. So why are these? Okay. So we're going to come back to this one. So again, if you're looking at your FAQs, we've talked about page 1, which is property address. So now we're on page 2 of that FAQ that Heather had in the chat. So this is another big one, okay? You are now not able, you will not be able to filter out listings based on compensation, listing agent, or listing office, okay? So that means that if your buyer has sent you 10 houses they want to see, you can filter them based on bedrooms, bathrooms, city, septic, not septic, whatever you want. You will not be able to filter based on the compensation. So if you only want to show houses that are X or higher, you're not going to be able to do that anymore. Okay. Not that any of us were doing that. You won't be able to filter if there's a bonus or not. Anything to do with compensation, you won't be able to filter. You will also not be able to filter out listings based on a listing agent or office. So if I decide, I'm going to pick on Desiree just because she asked a question. I decide I don't like Desiree or her company, I now can't decide that my buyers are just not going to, I'm not going to send them those houses. You can't do that. Okay. Should have never been able to do that. There's very few valid reasons why you would want to do that. This doesn't mean that you can't sort them. It doesn't mean that you can't display yours first. You can absolutely do all of those things. You just can't outright filter out listings that are going to your buyers based on compensation, listing agent, or listing office. Okay. So a lot of IDXs, if you've got your own website, a lot of times they do have the capability of putting yours first, like kind of featured listings or whatever. But even if, if your person's asked for all 5-bedroom homes with a horse barn, if 10 things come up, yours can still go first. You can absolutely push them out first. That has nothing to do with this. You can sort however you want. You just can't say that I'm only sending these 9 because this one's either not offering me enough money or is listed by a person or firm that I don't want to sell. I don't really know. I think a lot of this, if any of you ever followed all the stuff going on in Iowa a couple of years ago, there were two rather large firms in Iowa that had like a Hatfield and McCoy thing going on. And they had completely separate policies within the MLS that they absolutely would not pay somebody from that other brokerage. I have a feeling a lot of this has to do with Iowa more than North Carolina, and they're probably not the only ones. I'm just kind of picking on them because it was a big deal, because it was like just two warring factions, and this one wouldn't pay this one, and this one wouldn't pay this one. You can't do that. Our MLS is an offer of cooperation and compensation. We need to cooperate and we need to compensate. Okay. And if you look at those FAQs, it really does go through kind of all of this stuff. So what does it mean to filter out? And it goes through, it actually means removing or blocking other participants' listings that are obtained from the MLS. If you get them from another source, I guess you can do with it what you will. Let's go back to our ethics. I can't think of too many reasons that are truly ethical and valid that you would not show a house based on compensation or the listing agent. You're welcome to correct me if I'm wrong, but I really can't think of too many things that would stand up in front of the commission or grievance panels of some sort or anything like that. Okay, so is ranking or sorting different from filtering out? Absolutely, yes. You can rank them and sort them all you want. Okay, and again, you can still filter out based on any other fields. If your people absolutely, don't want to be inside the city because their car taxes are going to be too high now. If you're at the beginning, you know what that means. Or that they only want single family homes or 4 bedrooms or whatever. All of that's absolutely valid. Go ahead, Shannon.
Okay, so it's actually Brooke Moore. I'm one of Shannon's agents.
Okay.
I have a question about that. What if your buyer does not agree to dual agency and you need to exclude the listings from your firm? Could you still do that?
Yeah, in that sense, yes. But I think what's going to happen back end wise, because we're not going to have any control over this. It's just going to be a field that goes away and flex. So like there's quite literally not going to be a button that you can push for that. But what you would have to do at that point when you send them out, you would just have to say, but A, B, and C, or A, B, and F, or whatever, can't do those because they are dual. So yeah, that's an interesting question. I really don't know exactly how that part is going to play out because that is, a fairly big one. I don't know how many of you have people that absolutely won't do dual. But I can bring that up at our next NAR meeting too, to ask what they're thinking will happen with that, because I really don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
But that might also, I guess part of what they might be thinking is that, it's up to your buyers to say no to those. It's not up to you to not send them. So even if they've previously agreed not to do dual, if you get that house in front of them and it is the perfect house for them, maybe you start having that conversation about, hey, I'll go talk to my broker and see if we can do designated. I will, we'll see what we can do, but it still might be the perfect house for them. And you may just have to renegotiate the terms of what dual means. Okay, let me make that note. Okay. All right. So that is that one. So this one, the section 18.2.12 is one of them that's going to wait until September 1 to roll out. So all listings displayed pursuant to IDX shall identify the listing firm and the email or phone number provided by the listing participant in a reasonably prominent location and in a readily visible color and typeface not smaller than the median used in the display of listing data. I know all of these are lots and lots of words. So what this means is on any website, again, if buyers on your website, Zillow, Homes, Realtor, all of those things, it's now going to say 123 Main Street. There's the pretty picture. And then underneath, it'll say, you know, provided by NCR MLS or whatever it's going to say on all those anyway. And then it's going to say ABC Realty 910-555-0122 or ABC Realty at abcrealty.com. Okay, so all buyers are automatically going to see the listing firms, possibly email and phone number, possibly an agent's. Okay, so those are, I know if we will, so yes, they're going to be able to see prominently in a readily visible color and typeface not smaller than the median used in the display of listing data. So it's not going to be itty bitty little things in an almost transparent, you know, your IDX provider, your website provider is not going to have any say over making it. They'll make it as little prominent as they can. That's their job, but it's going to be on there. Okay. So there's that. The reason, and if anybody has any questions on, you know, I'm trying to think what the, again, this is for transparency. It's for, you know, giving the buyers options, all of those kinds of things. All of that. I know there's people that are not happy about this. And there's really nothing that can be done. But I will say that when NAR started talking about these things, they were going to put the listing agent's name, phone number, and email. So this is a little bit better. And it doesn't have to be both phone number and email. It just has to be a phone number or an email of someone that they could get a hold of in the listing office agent. So why I keep saying office/agent is this is why it's going to take until September to figure this out. Because right now, the Flex and all the other MLSs have to decide how this is going to work. Are they going to get a, you know, is each firm just going to decide we're just going to put our main office phone number on there, or main office email? Do we even have that? Is it the broker in charge's information? Is it each individual listing agent's information on each individual listing? So that has to be decided, and it is up to the firms and all of that on what that can be. But then Flex has to get in there. So if every firm decides, no, it's going to be each individual listing agent's information, well, all those numbers and emails need to be provided to Flex, and then they have to figure out, are they doing some sort of giant drop down for each firm? So every time you put a listing in, do I have to like go search for mine in some sort of drop down? Am I going to be able to type it in? It's probably not going to be a type in because it has to be an approved phone number or email. So this is why this is going to take until September. It sounds like it's a pretty simple change. It's just going to appear there. I mean, that information's already in there. You know, we already have all that information. We at the bottom in the proprietary area, but the MLSs don't know which of those phone numbers they should be using, because usually like your cell phone number is in there and the office phone number is in there. They need to know which one they're supposed to be pulling. Okay, so this one's going to take a while to roll out. You're not going to see it until after September, start hitting websites and all of that, unless by some magic they get it up and running before then. But this one is one of them that's been pushed off. Any questions? No, it's not the happiest one, but still with the intent to just get all the information out there to the most clients, I suppose. So section 18.31, listings displayed pursuant to IDX shall contain only those fields of data designated by the MLS. Display of all other fields is prohibited. Confidential fields intended only for MLS participants and users showing instructions, property and for security information may not be displayed. Okay, so really what they did here is taking out that cooperative compensation is now not one of those proprietary fields. So when I was saying public view versus private view, you see things on the MLS that you wouldn't see on Zillow. And those do include things like showing instructions, agent remarks, all of that kind of stuff that's at the bottom. Those would never go out to the public at large, and they still won't. But cooperation or compensation is not one of those things anymore. Okay. So section 18.312 is display of expired and withdrawn listings are still prohibited, but display on IDXs of sold listings are not prohibited. So there are some areas in the country that never showed sold data on an IDX feed. And now they can. They don't have to, but they can. It's not prohibited. So a lot of these things towards the end are the ones that I'm not going to go to hugely in depth. When they start getting into like the VOWs and the BBOs and all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to read all of these out. And if you have questions, I can see if I know what the answers are. And if I have any information as I'm going over any of these, I will let you know. But we are getting to the point of the stuff that I'm like, yeah, this isn't really my thing. The big ones, like I said, were the free, the compensation being visible, and the offer of compensation only to NCR MLS, all of those kind of things. Okay. So also the VOW may not make available for search by or display to registrants. Sales price of sold information is not publicly accessible in the jurisdiction of the MLS. So ours is, our MLS permits sold data, so this doesn't really apply to us, but VOWs are different than the virtual office websites are slightly different than IDX and all of that kind of stuff. So again, lots of technical stuff, not my forte. So if you have questions about this, definitely jump in and listen to that the Tri-Summit thing on March 3rd, and we'll go back over that again as we're talking. But I don't know. I'm not going to talk anymore about VOWs because this is just not my thing. So, and then statistical reports. It's kind of all the same stuff. I mean, it's just saying that anything that goes into the statistical reports is already, agreed to in the MLS. Still with the compensation is fine. So, and this one is kind of interesting though too. So you have participants may select the IDX listings they choose to display on objective criteria. So one of those is, so one of the things that you cannot decide to not push out is based on compensation. The other one that you cannot decide not to push out because of is the level of service provided by the listing firm. And so this is one of the other reasons why they did the, not being able to filter out based on the listing office or listing agent, is they don't wants you to be able to say, so you know those entry only listing companies and those limited service companies, you can't not send their listings out to your buyers. Okay. So again, they may not be who you choose to deal with. They may not be your cup of tea, but you can't exclude them from the choices that your buyers have when they're looking at houses. Okay. Just make sure that you're aware of that. So yeah, again, these are all kind of just going over how the MLS is making some of these things possible. We've already kind of gone over those. More VOWs. Okay. And now we're back to some of these. So non-filtering. So this one data source in the brokerage back office feed, these are the things that you probably will never see anything happening on. Usually it's the IDX providers that have questions for like regional MLS on how they get their feeds and do all that stuff. And that's going to be the majority of these. So if you are a web designer or if you're super in to IDX and all of that, I'm sure this stuff is interesting for you. Definitely read through it and definitely listen to the attorney when he talks about it, because he's going to go over a little bit more of this, but it's not anything that's probably going to affect the way that you do business and you put yourself out in front of the public. And that's what we wanted to get out today, is what to do to just make sure that you're in compliance by March 1st. Yeah, so those are all just repeats on there. But that FAQ sheet that's in there is super helpful. It really will kind of guide you through a lot of questions. And if you have any other questions, the very first page of that FAQ says that questions can be sent to NAR policy questions. And so, and I'm probably going to go ahead and type in that question about filtering out for dual when we leave this meeting, because I think that's a great question. And I don't, as far as I know, through all the NAR things that I've sat through, nobody's brought that up. So I don't know that there is an answer for that in there. I have a feeling that the answer is, well, you still send them to them and then you just tell them that those are the ones that are dual, but it's definitely a good question to ask. So I don't see anything in chat. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts? Heather, did you notice anything that I outright missed?
Nope, I think you got it all.
Okay. So the big thing is, and definitely raise your hand or jump in if you think of anything. But the big things, like I said before, is that there's 36, 37 of you that were on this today. There were quite a few more than that signed up. But as far as I know, you're the only 36 or 37 people out of 900 and how many?
36.
936. So 900 of your fellow co-brokes just in the Jacksonville Board of Realtors may not know this information. Okay. I see a lot of brokers in charge on here. I see a lot of owners on here. I know you're here to just get the information and bring it back to your people, and thank the good Lord for you all. But there's going to be lots of agents who just don't know this. And there's going to be lots of agents outside of Jacksonville. If you don't know, your Board of Realtors puts out a heck of a lot more information and education than a lot of the boards around us. They do a really good job of making sure that they try to touch all topics as much as possible. But this is a really important one. And just, you know, the word may not be getting out. I think a lot of people unsubscribe from NAR emails. They unsubscribe from, gosh, hopefully not, the Jacksonville Board of Realtors emails. And I always tell my agents, if you're not getting an email every Wednesday and Friday from JBOR, you've unsubscribed somehow. Please call Heather or Ashley and ask them to resubscribe you, because this information went out. Just tons of information that you need to know is going out on there. So definitely, you know, jump back on those and make sure you're getting them. But please be kind to your fellow agents who don't have this information. reasonable and prudent agents should be up to date on as much as they can be, but gosh, there's just so much going on. So when you do see somebody advertise something as free, or you do see, or you hear somebody say, I'm not going to go show that house, they're only paying X% or something, just kind of pull them aside and nicely inform them of, hand them, send them the link to the FAQs. I don't know, but let's help each other kind of learn through all of this. These are kind of huge sweeping changes. We haven't had these types of changes come down from NAR in a long time. I mean, I know last year we had, 10.5 that kind of put some not restrictions, but a real watchdog on what we're posting on social media and all of that. But these are a lot of changes. There are a lot of big changes, but they were made because the Department of Justice pointed out what they thought were inconsistencies in the way that we do business. And we want to be known as the ethical organization. We have this huge code of ethics, many, many pages long, that we do adhere to, and other real estate agents might not. But we want to make sure that we're always trying to do the right thing. And I think some of these are big leaps forward in trying to do the right thing for clients and customers alike. But yeah, if you have any questions or any complaints or anything like that, you're welcome to send them up the flagpole at NAR. They do actually like to hear from agents and know what the boots on the ground really have to contend with things like this. So yeah. And again, yeah, if you digest some of this and you have any questions whatsoever, you feel free to reach out to me. You can find my phone number or email in Flex. If you don't know how to do that, come to one of our Flex classes soon. Or you can reach out to the Board of Realtors and Heather will send you my way, or answer the question herself because she knows most of this or all of this as well. And then do look into going to that Tri-State Summit, March 3rd, 3 p.m. It's a virtual event. There's going to be much more information than what I just went over. A lot of this, like I said, I do sit on the regional board of managers, so we talk about these things a lot, and I do sit on an NAR committee that actually pushed a lot of these things through. Well, they pushed them through before I was on it, but I've gotten to sit in on making these FAQs and all of that. So I have heard a lot of people talking about these issues and what they really mean to us, and they do actually mean a lot to our day-to-day business. So just be on the lookout for anything else coming down. And just, like I said, be nice to each other. Got a lot of changes coming.
And I will have this video saved and posted for everybody. I'll send an email out with the link for the FAQs that I posted in the chat, the link for the registration for the summit that Amy's been talking about, and then the video itself. So any of you guys that want to share with your agents in your office or anything like that, it'll be posted for you before the end of the day. And I'll send it to you guys via email.
Okay. Well, what's coming up next, Heather? You want to put any shout outs to anything before they all jump off?
We have Bradford Tax. They're doing a virtual tax. I don't want to call it a summit. That's not the right word. Virtual tax class on Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. That's posted in Flex. Just register through Zoom like normal. And then we have a blood drive on Wednesday starting at 9 a.m. You can go to the blood drive, their Red Cross's website, and register through there. We are 4 people shy of our goal of 18 people to be registered for that day. So if anybody out there is interested in donating blood, please do sign up so that we can reach our goal. Yeah, next week is March, so we're all just kind of holding on tight to our calendars, I think. So if y'all need anything class-wise, if you need any education, if you have any suggestions for some education, please feel free to send me an email directly, or you can contact our education chair, Katie Beyer, who's pretty phenomenal, and we will work on whatever it is that we need to do to get that education you guys are craving and looking for. So we've got some stuff coming. Check out that Career Center page so you guys can see what's upcoming.
Still muted. Okay. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate your dedication to your careers.
Yep, what she said. Thanks, guys.